What is the most widely hated website on the internet? Nowadays, I couldn't tell you, but in late 2005, few were as despised as Ebaumsworld.com. On November 4th at 8:17 a.m., a Something Awful forums member started a thread titled, "Why you should put watermarks on your photoshops." In it, they linked a page on Ebaumsworld containing 4 graphic photoshops of children's book covers. They were each watermarked with the phrase, "This image is hosted on Ebaumsworld.com," but of the images, one stood out from the rest. Mommy? I think I'm pooping out my intestines. It had a second watermark, the Something Awful grenade. The thread's OP shared this image, or at least, I think they did. Thanks, Photo Bucket. They then wrote, "Were all of these pictures taken from our forums, or just that one?" Turns out, it was the former. They were all from a weekly event Something Awful ran called Photoshop Friday, where users submitted photoshops based on a specified theme. On January 17th, 2002, the theme was children's books. In the replies, someone groans. A thread about Ebaumsworld stealing content? Is it that time of the week again? Ebaumsworld is a humor site owned by the titular Eric Bauman, hosting hilarious content such as, what if celebrities were fat? Their official stance on stealing went something like, "Look man, if we want something on our site, we always ask for permission. If a user submits something to us, our staff will scour the web just to make sure it wasn't stolen. And if we miss something, just prove you're the original creator and we'll take it down lickety-split." But people's actual experience with the site was often much different. Internet artists commonly testified that their content had been reposted without permission, watermarked on a page stuffed with ads, and that any attempts at contacting them to get it taken down were either fruitless or only succeeded after many, many emails. An example being Weeble, creator of this thing you've definitely seen before. Perhaps on Ebaumsworld because it was stolen, along with 3 other animations of his. Weeble was later quoted as saying, "Nothing on the planet would get me to work with Eric Bauman unless it involved saving a burning child from an AIDS-filled orphanage." Back to the Future's experience was somehow even worse. He created the animation schfifty-five. After finding his work on Ebaumsworld, he emailed them demanding it be taken down and to be compensated for the revenue they made off it. It was ignored, so he reposted it to the Ebaumsworld forums. A mod snarkily replied that he should, quote, "mail Eric a photocopy of his copyright registration form." After people pointed out that copyright is automatic in the US, the mod replied to one of them saying, "Well, in that case, the maker can send a picture of his cock typing in the code to make the file to Ebaum, and I'm sure he'll get right on it. BTW, you're banned for no real reason." The thread was deleted shortly after. I unfortunately wasn't able to definitively prove that this poster is Back to the Future, though I personally think it's likely. But the funniest thing Ebaum has stolen is Super Monkey Ball Mini by Sega. I wonder why they had to take that one down. In mature fashion, they replaced it with an image calling everyone who clicked on the page a homo. Suffice to say, Something Awful users, known as goons, weren't big fans of Eric. In fact, many of them had already reported their own content being stolen. They immediately began devising ways to get back at him. Some suggested image leeching to waste his bandwidth, others to make racist propaganda with the Ebaumsworld watermark on it. Behind the scenes, Something Awful's owner, Lotax, had taken notice. According to him, around this time, someone went to the Ebaumsworld forums explaining that the photoshops were stolen. In response, the thread was deleted, and they were banned. Lotax emailed Ebaumsworld demanding they take down the images, but he didn't receive a quick enough response for his liking. Unwilling to escalate things legally, he turned to a more crude solution. At 11:17 a.m., 3 hours after the initial thread, Lotax started a new one. Quote, "Ebaumsworld has once again ripped off the content you guys created and claimed it as his own. Maybe you guys can help out by registering an account on their forums and asking several hundred times to stop stealing our content." That's right, it's Forum Invasion Friday! Forum Invasion Friday will end once Mr. Bauman removes the shit he stole from you guys. Unbeknownst to anyone at the time, Lotax had just set off a chain of events that, over the next few months, would develop into a situation so drama-ridden that internet denizens began referring to it as World Wide Web War I. But despite its grandiose title, nowadays little is known about this incursion, nor the events preceding it. Parts of the war transpired in private forums and AIM chats, and the body of public evidence that once existed has been ravaged by link rot. Some of the story can only be puzzled together through dubious testimony stored on a now-deleted website. It would take a truly insane person to even attempt to create a coherent timeline of events for this. So, hi, I'm Crunchy Bagels, and I talk about weird things on the internet. This is the story of World Wide Web War I. But first, a word from today's sponsor, boot.dev.
Dear God, there's a snake on this plane.
Quick, does anybody here know Python?
I do. Stand back.
You saved us.
Will you marry me?
This could be you, if you used boot.dev. Learn not just Python, but SQL, JavaScript, TypeScript, and more. Not only that, but boot.dev uses a gamified fantasy setting where you earn XP, complete quests, and fight bosses. So you'll be able to focus on it even if every neuron in your brain has been fried from scrolling TikTok like it's your full-time job. Even better, it's free to watch and read every course, with only the interactive elements being paywalled. So what are you waiting for? Scan this QR code or use code CrunchyBagels to get 25% off your entire first year on the annual plan, with a 30-day no questions asked money back guarantee. Come on, do it. No balls. As soon as Lotex posted the thread, goons began registering for the Ebaumsworld forums en masse with names such as Ebaum sucks balls, and Ebaum licks dick, and Ebaum equals
nice guy.
Unfortunately, nobody thought to throw the page on archive.org mid-raid, so our understanding of what exactly took place comes from updates and screenshots posted to Something Awful, such as this. Comments about Ebaumsworld.
Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it?
I hear Ebaum is gay. 13 minutes into the raid, goons began reporting that the Ebaumsworld forums were lagging under the weight of their trolling. Time to shitpost even harder. So many people flooded the forums that they reached their highest ever user count. They disabled registration, but this did little to salvage the situation. The forums began spitting out cannot find server errors left and right. It seems they were going up and down intermittently. But even when people could get in, the page was grindingly slow. Eventually, Ebaumsworld would even have to restrict new posts to once every 30 seconds. Less than half an hour in, the Ebaumsworld forums had been brought to their knees, so the goons asked themselves, what next? Some of the lucky ones who registered before it was disabled made their login details public so others could spam with their account. But with how difficult it was to even load the forums, this was a dubious option. Someone else posted a link to their chat box, which was subsequently also invaded. But it was easy to take down the forums, trivial to fill up a chat box. The main site was a different beast entirely. It could handle a lot more traffic than those piddly little forums. And worse yet, there was nowhere to call Eric gay. People pointed out that if they upload large files to Ebaum's submissions page, they can eat up his bandwidth. One goon attempted to upload the entirety of Civ 4, but unfortunately it wouldn't take exe files. Another user got around this by renaming the file extension, then uploaded the entire World of Warcraft 1.80 patch. But if you were willing to get your hands dirty, there was another way to hit Ebaumsworld. A denial of service attack is an attempt to disrupt the normal operation of a website by flooding it with traffic. Do it with multiple systems and it becomes distributed, or a DDoS. A successful DDoS could actually take down the Ebaumsworld main site, at least for a time. So, how do you DDoS? The answer is actual programming knowledge. But for those who lack that, even the common man has a DOS tool, Windows Command Prompt. Nowadays, yeah, this won't do anything, but in 2005, when bandwidth was generally much lower, a forum's user base spam pinging a small website could genuinely cause some damage. But Ebaumsworld is no small website. Would something as simple as Windows Command Prompt really be able to take it down? Some goons wanted to try their luck. One problem, DDoSing is illegal, and Lotax wasn't about to let people openly commit a crime on his forum. Well, guess DDoS is off the table. Suddenly, some users in the thread turned over a new leaf. Actually, this Ebaumsworld site isn't half bad. I think we should archive the entire site's contents for future generations. Does anybody else have a wget command to archive this beautiful website with? Some people did. So, what does this wget command do? Well, it downloads everything on ebaumsworld.com. I mean, it's an archival script. What do you expect? Oh wait, there's more. It then deletes the files it just archived, and parses every link on the page, downloads and deletes those pages over and over again in an attempt to run up as much bandwidth as possible. Wait, this is just spam ping with extra steps. No, you don't understand. It's archiving. Look, there's no time to figure out why the downloads keep getting deleted. Just keep on wgetting so we can get that W over Ebaum. It is worth noting that many people in the thread did genuinely think wgetting to run up his bandwidth was legal, which, look, I'm no lawyer, but I'd be surprised if that's true. Shockingly, even though Lotax was still active in the thread, he didn't ban wget. In fact, he didn't say anything about it. Soon, it seemed like almost everyone in the thread was archiving Ebaum's entire website. In fact, and you're not gonna believe this, but one of the creators of the Peanut Butter Jelly Time video, Comrade Flynn, joined in. I'm not joking. I wasn't going to do anything until I noticed his icon is the dancing banana I copyrighted years ago. That's true, by the way. Now you'll feel the sad, weak rage of my wget. It was clear things were wgetting out of hand, yet despite this, the Ebaum's main site was no worse for wear. Lotax's previous silence on the matter was broken with, I never told anybody to use wget or archive his site. I don't know if downloading his files is illegal or not. If it's illegal, people shouldn't do it. Around this time, Eric Bauman, or his staff, complained to both their internet service provider and SomethingAwful's about the raid. At 1:08 p.m., the SomethingAwful site admin, Radium, started a new thread explaining this, writing, We don't want to cause any problems for our ISP, so we want to make it clear that we are not asking you to actually attack these people in any way. We are not telling you to do anything illegal, so don't. Around the same time, Radium edited Lotax's inciting post to include a similar warning, then posted in the thread, We are not asking you to spam, DDoS, piss on, or otherwise attack Ebaum. Please don't. You just make things worse. Many users either stop wgetting or continue their activities in private. However, around the same time as this message, some goons begin to notice oddities on SomethingAwful. Is anyone else having problems with this forum, especially with loading images? I think the SomethingAwful images server is being hammered back. CSS is sometimes not loading / slowly loading and not all images appear. The forums begin running slowly. Soon, SomethingAwful is struck with a server is busy error. Many goons are kicked off the page. They quickly come back online, and for a second things seem like they're stabilizing, but almost immediately, they were plunged back under again. Posts in the thread come to a screeching halt, going from multiple messages being posted every minute to a single post every few minutes. The SomethingAwful forums were buckling under the weight of an unknowable force. It chugged and limped onward for as long as it could, until the machine collapsed. Are we back? It didn't take long for the forums to come back online. Nobody knew what had happened, except Radium. In his thread, he wrote, They are now attacking us. I'm trying to compensate for it. Most of the SomethingAwful forums were closed from public viewing. Radium set up a new forum's front page to, quote, keep DDoS attacks at bay. 10 minutes later, Lotax officially bans using any bandwidth leeching scripts against Ebaumsworld. Despite this and other warnings, people keep posting DDoS instructions. At 2:51 p.m., Lotax writes, Okay, never mind. Nobody is f***ing listening to me, and I'm tired of repeating myself. He then closes the thread. Amidst all this, shortly before the thread met its end, someone posted a now unavailable screenshot from the Ebaumsworld chat box. Someone claiming to be Eric himself is quoted as writing, "Dear Richard, strong-arm tactics don't work in negotiations. Love, Eric." Without the full screenshot, it's unclear if this is the real Eric, though Lotax responds to it in the thread as if it really is him. 2 hours later, Radium made a new thread recapping the situation. He downplayed the extent of what Something Awful did to Ebaumsworld, making the raid sound like respectable complaining rather than the spamming and brigading it really was. He also makes no mention of wget, but then he revealed something new. Ebaum puts malicious JavaScript on their site to attack us. He then posted this code for everyone to see. Whenever a user opened a page on Ebaumsworld, it would send an HTTP GET request to 3 separate pages on Something Awful. In other words, if one user opened a page on Ebaumsworld, 3 requests would be sent to Something Awful's servers. If 50,000 users opened a page on Ebaumsworld, you could expect Something Awful's forums to be a little bit busy. Radium finished off by writing, "Using your visitors to DDoS another site after ripping off said site's content is pretty much the lowest of the low. I could never see myself posting malicious code on my employer's website, exploiting our own visitors, and still have the balls to cash my paycheck." In the aftermath, Lotax and Radium informed Eric's ISP about this JavaScript. Apparently, they didn't care. To many goons, this officially crossed the line. While the goons' wgetting barely scratched Ebaumsworld, when the attack inverted, Something Awful was the first to fold. And with Lotax still unwilling to take legal action, there was nothing the goons could do but stew in their anger. Imagine, if you will, a snowball rolling down a hill. At first it's small, mundane, and harmless, but as it collects more snow, it begins to grow. Slowly at first, but soon it's big enough that the ground quivers beneath it. It fractures into more snowballs, each growing in turn, which then also splinter, causing a chain reaction. And before you know it, there's an avalanche, mammoth and unmitigable, burying all in its wake. Though nobody knew it yet, the snowball was already gaining momentum, and it certainly wasn't getting any smaller when an Ebaumsworld staff member entered the thread. His name was MG-Unit. At 10:49 PM, he wrote, "The images were removed. No one knew they were from Something Awful, and I'm sure E would have removed them as soon as he got the email had we not been invaded. Longtime goons will remember about a year ago when the same thing happened. Ebaumsworld forums were invaded, and offending images were removed since we have not knowingly posted images that originated on these forums. Everything got insanely out of hand, both sides acted rashly, and it all could have been avoided. In the end, it just goes to show you that the internet is in fact serious business." MG-Unit then answered questions. When asked about Ebaumsworld DDoSing them, he wrote, "I don't know anything about DDoS in the site code as I didn't see any of it for myself, but if it was done, it was wrong." When asked how they missed the Something Awful watermark in one of the images, he claimed that while he wasn't in the content review process for the image, the person who was probably wasn't very internet savvy. But despite his explanations, the goons were furious at him. He apologized multiple times, claimed he read Something Awful religiously, and that it was all an honest mistake, but this didn't seem to help. Worse yet, many goons already hated MG-Unit because of a situation that had occurred earlier that year. In fact, you already know who MG-Unit is. Remember the whole schfifty-five Back to the Future situation from the intro? The mod who snarkily replied to him and deleted his post was none other than MG-Unit. On January 14th of that year, someone claiming to be Back to the Future's friend had posted about the situation on none other than Something Awful. This was many goons' introduction to MG-Unit. After receiving enough flack, the man of the hour had appeared in the thread to explain himself, claiming he deleted the post because, quote, "We just don't feel that the forums are the best place for that." Going back to the current thread, someone brought up this old incident. In response, MG-Unit gave an entirely new, previously unmentioned explanation for why he deleted it. The person in question shared IPs with a known spammer. When goons didn't accept his explanation, he finally seemed to lose patience. What is retarded is when someone comes in here and tries to work towards getting what you say you want, a lot of people decide they've got nothing better to do than be assholes. Good night. Within 15 minutes of this post, MG Unit took to the Ebaumsworld forums to give them an explanation of the raid. The post itself isn't archived, but luckily a goon copy and pasted the entirety of it to Something Awful. A few images that were made by Something Awful forum members were in last night's update. Instead of giving 24 or 12 hours time for his email to be read, Lotax told all his members to come over here and spam the joint up. Not people asking to be heard, but pure spam. Lotax can deny it all he wants, but what he sponsored was a DDoS attack. If that wasn't what he wanted, he would have called off his mindless followers once he realized he was causing the forums to be unusable. Only after his ISP was called did he try to put an end to this. After hours of our forums being attacked, his forums died out. I don't know what happened, but I definitely think that whoever/whatever was behind it was only giving them what they deserved. Now they cry foul that whoever took their forums down is a coward/homo. How can they say this without being struck down by the hypocrisy gods? In the end, if he had given E time to read over his emails, the images would have in all likelihood been removed. Instead, he tried a strong-arm tactic that they regularly do on forums/blogs/guestbooks smaller than them. Well, for once, it backfired. MG Unit apparently deleted this write-up within 15 minutes of it being posted on Something Awful, but it was too late. Among goons, MG Unit's name was now forever tarnished. After realizing the infringing images had been deleted, Lotax closed the thread, and for the time being, it seemed like the drama had subsided. Except, in Radium's final thread, a goon had suggested that someone should make a cartoon explaining their skirmish with Ebaumsworld, and it just so happens that a certain 14-year-old budding Flash animator saw this message. This is Alt-F4. On November 6th at 8:31 p.m., the Flash Ebaumsworld.com was uploaded to Newgrounds. 3 minutes later, Alt-F4 started a Something Awful thread about it. He had asked another goon named Trapezoid to create the song for him, which was apparently done in less than 24 hours. Alt-F4 animated it on a similarly tight schedule. The song and animation told the story of Eric Bauman traveling across the internet stealing from every website under the sun, before Lotax punched him in the face and banged his mom, ending off with a black screen explaining how Something Awful was DDoSed. Wait, Trapezoid? Where do I recognize that name? Neil Cicierega? You know, that guy who's known the world round for creating the masterpiece of a song that is Birdfucker. He also did all those other things, but like, they're not as good. Also, yes, Mr. Suedo Zen himself doesn't know how to pronounce Bauman. A throng of goons gathered round to applaud their work, including Lotax himself. Their support propelled it to the #1 rated video on Newgrounds, though this obviously didn't last. On November 8th, it was front-paged on Newgrounds, with the site's owner remarking, "I don't think I've ever gotten more front-page requests in my life." It apparently received 124,000 views in less than 4 days. Following its release, Alt-F4 would continually update the animation, ironing out visual kinks left over from its rushed production. Nowadays, it's actually pretty difficult to find the original version of the animation. Thankfully, it was common practice in the thread for goons to mirror the animation on their own sites. Archives of these mirrors are, as far as I can tell, the only place where you can find the original iteration of it today. But there was one mirror among the bunch that would become far more relevant than the others. At 9:26 p.m. on November 6th, a goon named Legal Condom hosted the Ebaumsworld.com flash on Ebaumsworldsucks.com. Alt-F4 immediately edited the URL into his original post, writing, "Thanks to a very generous person." The next day, Something Awful gave Ebaumsworld Sucks Awful Link of the Day, which, despite the title, is a compliment. Soon, people even reported the site popping up when they searched Ebaum-related terms on Google. This animation was quickly going viral. It's impossible for me to overstate how important this flash is to the story. See, prior to its release, proof of Ebaumsworld's theft was hard to come by. Even if someone knew a specific example of something Eric stole, they probably didn't have the links handy to elevate it beyond testimony. With his new booming website, Legal Condom attempted to remedy this. By 2:11 p.m. on November 10th, 2 new pages had been added to Ebaumsworldsucks.com titled Proof 1 and Proof 2. The first contained Back to the Futures thread, while the second was a list of Something Awful posts where goons recounted how Eric had stolen from them. But far more effective than these pages was the animation it mirrored. Even if the flash itself didn't contain proof, the song was catchy, the animation funny, and even without evidence, the legitimately gripping narrative it told in ballad-style lyrics made for effective propaganda. All of this on a memorable URL. This was better than proof. It was lightning in a bottle, and I think Eric realized it too. In the same post where Legal Condom announced that proof 2 had been added, he also revealed, quote, "Eric has already contacted me about the site and there are no legal grounds for him to get us shut down. Eric knew about their site and seemingly wanted it gone. However, Legal Condom was unwilling to post their chat log, citing fear of legal trouble for posting a private conversation. With a flash and 2 pages of evidence against Eric, Ebaumsworld Sucks had positioned itself as the premier anti-Ebaum site. Because of this, one goon suggested Legal Condom add, quote, "some screenshots of Azuretek's posts to the list of proofs." Wait, who's Azuretek? Well, in the thread Back to the Future's friend made, a user named Azuretek had claimed to work as a programmer for Ebaumsworld. He prattled on about how much money Eric made, talked highly of him, and in general acted dismissive towards the goon's anger. But what made Azuretek truly infamous came near the end of his first post in the thread. Oh yeah, also, doing little code tricks in your Flash doesn't work. If he wants something on his site, he'll have someone decompile it and fix it so he can use it on his site. Goons accused Azuretek of bragging about scrubbing creators' watermarks, even though he had only ever claimed that it happened, not that he was the one who personally did it. Shortly after, Azuretek was perma-banned from Something Awful. But Legal Condom didn't seem as convinced, responding, "What was so damning about those posts? How is that proof? It's not, and no, I will not put that up." Over the next couple months, the drama with Ebaumsworld would slow down. Ulta4 and Trapezoid would go on to work on their next Flash project together. They actually decided to reference the Ebaumsworld Flash with a little Easter egg. Oops. Turns out they put their Ebaumsworld Easter egg in, you know, one of the biggest Flash animations on the entire internet. For all intents and purposes, the snowball had come to a stop. But it was still there, and with the release of the Ebaumsworld Flash, the internet climate contained the perfect conditions for an avalanche. All the snowball needed was one little push. Hey, now that I think about it, World Wide Web War 1 also goes by another name, ytmnd-day.
You're the man now, dog. You're the man now, dog. You're the man now, dog. You're the man now.
On ytmnd.com, users create pages called sites using 3 elements: an image, or GIF, text, and soundbite. But what defines YTMND is its fads. Basically, YTMND memes. John Picard, MySpace suicide, lol internet, doesn't change facial expressions. People made site after site riffing on the same joke. One entry for that last fad was titled, Lindsay Lohan doesn't change facial expressions, found on lohanfacial.ytmnd.com and released by SpliceVW on October 25th, 2005. It's an image compilation where, surprise, surprise, she does indeed not change facial expressions. People generally liked the site, including Eric. At 5:14 a.m. on January 6th, a user named KC Cool documented the theft on the site. Ebaum doesn't change by stealing our facial expressions. As you've probably come to expect by now, the YTMNDers weren't happy campers. Hating Ebaumsworld quickly became a fad, with sites often pairing it with other fads and common sound bites. But among these, one trend stood out. Many YTMNDs were paired with elements from the Ebaumsworld.com Flash. More prevalent than the song was Ulta4's character design for Eric Bauman. Pictures of Eric are hard to come by, so YTMNDs about him defaulted to using Ulta4's drawing. All across YTMND, people were linking Ebaumsworld Sucks in comments, sharing the Flash and getting the message out. By sheer circumstance, the Ebaumsworld Flash was becoming the face of YTMND's anger. In the middle of all this was Lohan Facial's creator, SpliceVW. At 1:52 a.m. on January 7th, they wrote on Commander KC Cool's site, I makey the thing he stole. And I tell you, while I don't own those images, I worked a long time to get those damn images lined up straight and adjust lighting and such. That sucker did nothing! I hate you, Ebaum! About a half hour later, he emailed Ebaumsworld, and at some point he even took to their forums regarding the theft, though he was apparently met with mockery and disbelief. Amidst all this, he wrote, "Okay guys, what can we do to get back at him?" At 2:37 p.m., the Ebaumsworld Wikipedia page added a section on ytmnd. Wikipedia had long become a hub for anti-Ebaum's evidence, with more written about their controversies than the actual site. The end of this newly added section reads, "The lack of a forums at present on ytmnd is perhaps the only thing preventing a huge-scale raid on Ebaumsworld's forums, although that may very well be round the corner." At roughly 7 p.m., ytmnd user Rambunctious Pie made a site under the URL ebaumraid.ytmnd featuring a screen cap of this section. They declared, "Start making accounts at Ebaumsworld and let any Something Awful people know as well if you can. We're going there 12 p.m. EST. That's 4 hours from now. Nobody rips ytmnd off and gets away with it. Who's with me?" The snowball was once again in motion. Alright, I know it's satisfying for the raid to begin at midnight, but that's not my time zone, so you. It started at 11. At 7:26 p.m., someone updated Wikipedia to say, "That's right, check Ebaumraid for details." This prompted an edit war where new edits talking about Ebaumraid were quickly deleted before being reinstated or altered. The ytmnd forums were offline at the time due to a server malfunction. In their place, users communicated through sites and comment sections, particularly that of Ebaumraid, though these comments no longer exist. However, around this time, something else interesting was happening. Ebaumraid told users to get Something Awful on board, but a Something Awful account costs $10 and ain't nobody paying for that. Don't get me wrong, I was able to find some buzz about it, but while some members did participate, it probably wasn't on the scale Rambunctious Pie had hoped for. I will note, however, that I found a January 8th post on Something Awful claiming there'd been like 18 threads about ytmnd day. I personally didn't find anywhere close to that many, so it's possible that some were deleted or I just missed them somehow. Either way, a site that seems to have participated far more is, ironically, one that spawned directly from Something Awful, 4chan, specifically their random board, B. They had just finished raiding an obscure forum called Cutting Buddies. Yes, they raided a self-harm forum. No, this is not even in the top 1,000 worst things 4chan users have done. 4chan around this time has basically no archives. Probably for the best, so we have to go off of secondhand info to find out what happened. One LiveJournal post from a B user reads, quote, "Within an hour, the message had spread to Something Awful, FARC, and of course, 4chan, where I first learned of this clusterfuck. Oh, it was a sight. B was peppered with threads on instruction how to perform a DDoS, and some included FileShack links to auto-pinging programs and the like. And what did I do? Laughed, mostly. I'm not all that big on ytmnd, as a good chunk of their content is emancipated from the depths of B, so I thought the situation a tad bit hypocritical. According to this recollection and others, another humor website, FARC, also joined the war, though I wasn't able to verify this. Of course, when I say a website joined the war, it was rarely in any official capacity. Take, for example, Newgrounds. It was apparently flooded with threads telling people either to raid or DDoS Ebaumsworld. This was so bad that 2 mods started 2 separate threads telling people they'd be banned if they didn't stop making posts about raiding and DDoSing Ebaumsworld. Another mod recalled the situation, claiming, "We were deleting and banning left and right." I can't say when exactly Newgrounds users got involved, considering most of it was deleted, though it was certainly prior to 11 p.m. According to one testimony, many internet denizens also took to AOL Instant Messenger to plan out their part of the raid in private. Of course, not everyone was patient enough to wait for the deadline. At least one ytmnder around this time made a site flexing their ban message. Many others likely did as well, but in case you haven't picked up on the trend yet, like half of all records from this time were purged. The internet is a forever archive, because once it's gone forever! Researching this video was a joy. At 9:43, the Ebaumsworld Wikipedia page became educational again. During all this, a Something Awful thread had been going on about the aforementioned monkey ball incident, but a goon named ytmnd-day had long derailed it into talk of ytmnd-day. According to the thread, Ebaumsworld forum mods were well aware of the upcoming raid. Registration remained open, but people with ytmnd-related usernames were being banned en masse. A screenshot most likely taken at 10:14 p.m. shows the Ebaumsworld forums were already in a dire state. A goon later recalled, "I was there at the time the spamming attacks happened. All of the thread titles were shit like, oh." I don't think I can say this on YouTube. Another screenshot showing the raiders' usernames reveals that at least 2 other forums had joined the raid, LUELinks and by extension, GameFAQs-LUEboard. One LUELinks user later wrote, "Oh ho ho, I was part of the attack. Me and a friend, we're cruising his LUELinks account, and a ton of threads started calming up about the war. We went to Ebaums and joined the fight. There was a really nice ytmnd where it showed you how to make a program to ping his servers 5,000 times. We didn't make one, but we're set for any future invasions." You've probably noticed by now that DDoSing was a huge part of ytmnd-day. Every site with moderation was scrambling to get rid of as many DDoS-related posts as they could, while the ones without moderation were filled with instructions on how to do so. According to yet another recollection, by 10:30 the forums were nigh unusably slow. What had once been a group of ragtag dissidents had transformed into an army, consisting of over 1,000 spammers, dozens of DDoS attacks, and one unified goal: to mount an onslaught so powerful that the forums collapsed. At 10:47, ytmnd user Catwatch posts a database error they received when trying to enter the Ebaumsworld forums. At the same time, ytmnd-day writes, "Holy shit! ytmnd users managed to crash the Ebaumsworld forums!" Soon, tons of ytmnds are made showing the fruits of their trolling, each one proclaiming victory. It's 0 hours to D-Day, and the Ebaumsworld forums have already been felled. It's about time I admit something to you. This is the single hardest video I've ever had to research in my entire life. No, I'm not exaggerating for YouTube retention, and yes, even harder than my 2-hour college thesis paper on the Nintendo GigaLeak. There's no pre-existing comprehensive source on ytmnd-day like there was for that video. Thanks, Sylvie, glad you liked it. As far as I know, I'm the first person to research this topic so deeply. On the one hand, I'm honored to push our understanding of internet history forward in my own small way. But on the other hand, this sucks. Oh, Crunchy, it's not that bad. If you're thinking that, no, it is that bad, and the reason why almost solely comes down to these next 2 chapters. It's at this exact point that the timeline becomes borderline impossible to make sense of. There are so many small details with so little evidence available that it's impossible for me to say exactly what happened and when. Just so this video doesn't get hella boring, I'm going to authoritatively regale what I think happened, but just know that evidence for some parts is more scant than others, and if there's anything I'm especially unsure about, I'll try to mention that. Look, all I'm saying is, if you're interested in the finer details of the completely masochistic process this video took to create, I'm going to be doing a director's commentary for it for $5 patrons and above, so if you're into that, be sure to join my Patreon. Anyway, where were we? It didn't take long for the Ebaumsworld forums to come back up, then go down again. By 11:42, the forums were online again, but closed for public viewing. This could be circumvented by registering an account, but some people reported not getting their activation email, and those that did get through were often banned quickly. Also, apparently they went down yet again, and then back up yet again. While not completely dead, many considered the forum's current state to mean victory. The internet now faced the same conundrum Something Awful had 2 months prior. What next? Well, many ytmnders were too busy celebrating to care. ytmnd-day urged goons to spam Ebaum's chat box, alleging that Eric himself had written in it, quote, "Your raid sucks." Of course, who knows if that was the real Eric, but people spammed it anyway. Some spammed their emails, others spammed ping. Everyone was spamming something. On January 8th at 12:43 a.m., a goon wrote, "Well, it seems the first casualty is 4chan itself. This implies that 4chan had gone down," which is seemingly corroborated by this LiveJournal entry. Unfortunately, I found no other documentation of this incident, so I can't elucidate further. But if that wasn't mysterious enough, just wait till you see what happens next. At 1:09 a.m., a goon linked Ebaumsworld.com/ytmnd.html, remarking, "Hacked? To my knowledge, there is only one surviving archive in the form of a ytmnd site showcasing what it contained. A blank canvas with 6 words. YTMND rules! Hacksorted by Evil K!" According to the site's comments, within a few minutes, the text was changed to something along the lines of, "Nuh-uh, YTMND sucks, lol," before being deleted entirely. According to a later statement from Ebaumsworld themselves, it was likely done by accessing an admin-restricted account. And that's quite literally all the documentation I was able to find regarding this event. Who's Evil K? Who knows? The page was likely only up for a few minutes total, so I suppose it tracks. But equally interesting is the goon who originally linked it. This is Max Goldberg, owner of ytmnd.com. This whole time, Max Goldberg had been watching the chaos from afar, making scant comments but largely staying out of it. The war raged on unimpeded through the night and into the morning. No later than 1:45 p.m., Max decided he finally needed to step in. In ytmnd's news section, he wrote, "And the complaints come marching in." As many of you have noticed by the anti-Ebaum sentiment, last night things seemed to reach boiling point. I tried to stop this all when it was a snowball, but it just turned into an avalanche. In regards to DDoS, don't do it. It sets a whole new precedent and will not end well. It affects a lot more than just Ebaumsworld and really crosses the line. While I never condoned the attacking, I was amazed to see so many communities come together for a vulgar display of power. I think there is something to be said for communities coming together for a common goal, even if it is over something so petty. Soon the ytmnd forums will be back up, and I'm sure at that point the Ebaumers will get a chance to strike back at our little community. Until that time, since I know I can't persuade you guys to stop, at least keep it legal. I now have a ton of cleanup work to do. If you see any DDoS or ping-related ytmnds, please report them. Max. You may have noticed the hyperlinked text in Max's statement. These ones link to Ebaumsworld sucks, while Ebaumers links to the Wikipedia page for homosexuality. Holy shit! Max was correct to call the situation an avalanche, but even though he admitted there was no reining in the situation, he would certainly still try. No later than 3:05 p.m., Ebaum raid was deleted. According to one comment, multiple other raid-related sites had met the same fate. But try as he might, nothing could stymie the internet's fury. It's around this time that the war developed in a particularly strange way. Let me introduce you to the Raids of Ebaum's news page, or for short, Raid News. Raid News was a series of GameFAQs forum posts on the board Random Insanity written by Mythic Knight et al., which attempts to give minute-to-minute updates on everything that happens from this point forward in the Ebaumsworld War. This is, without question, the single most valuable source I ever found while researching this topic. That is very sad. First, Raid News is almost exclusively unsourced. At best, it's an extensive written testimony of the events that unfolded during this stage of the war. Okay, but is it at least reliable testimony? I can safely say that I've found out about multiple events first from Raid News before later finding better evidence for them, which gives me some confidence in it. But you have to remember, this was written by GameFAQs users, so children. The standard of evidence here is not exceptionally high. For example, at one point they claimed that ytmnd was hacked. I was pretty skeptical, so I emailed Max himself to ask if this was true. It wasn't. There are so many specific sections I could dive into, but I think you get the picture. But hey, at least I can just go on to Random Insanity, find the original posts, and see what the discussion was like so I can maybe have more of a lead and find more evidence. Right? Right? Except, Random Insanity doesn't keep any archives, and it's locked from public viewing, so the Wayback Machine has all on it. The only reason we even know some of what went on in Random Insanity is because of an archived website which Mythic Knight updated alongside the posts. I stumbled onto this website by complete accident. So, however dubious its reliability is, thank God I did, because as you will quickly come to realize, a lot of what's about to come is based on this one source. Just keep the disclaimer from the beginning of this chapter in mind. Okay, where were we? Right, so Raid News starts with some recap and a list of all the raiding websites, which is much longer than I was able to verify, and I suspect it's rather inflated, but here it is on screen for posterity. Onto the actual news, by 3:17 6:17 p.m., 3 GameFAQs boards were actively discussing and participating in the raid. Current events, random insanity, and life, the universe, and everything. Rumors spread throughout these boards that an Ebaumsworld counterattack was on the horizon. However, the mods had denounced the entire war. But then, for the second time in one day, Ebaumsworld was hacked. This time it was their forums. At 6:27 p.m., a ytmnd-der posted a screenshot of multiple anti-Ebaums topics stickied in their forums. Judging by the date of the replies, they were likely benign posts which were then edited by the hacker. It's unclear exactly how much power they had, but shortly after this, Raid News reports that the Ebaumsworld forums have been intermittently redirecting to adult and pornographic websites. At 7:48, the Ebaumsworld forums went down again. They likely went back up again shortly afterwards, because within 30 minutes, Raid News reported that they were down yet again. At the same time, an entirely different and somehow even more illicit prong of the attack was forming. Raid News reports people not only finding the IP addresses of Ebaum's mods in order to DDoS them, but finding the addresses of Eric's relatives, people entirely neutral to the conflict. By 8:26, the Ebaumsworld forums were opened to the public again, possibly by the hacker. 10 minutes later, they were redirecting to ytmnd, then to the lohan GIF. The redirection is soon fixed, but immediately afterwards, the forums went down yet again. At some point on January 8th, Max reinstated the ytmnd forums. In his news post, he'd predicted they'd be raided, and no later than 9:01 p.m., his hunch was proven right. But it came from an unexpected source: GameSpot and IGN. The incident itself is seemingly lost, and it's worth noting that outside of Raid News, I haven't been able to find mention of IGN being part of this invasion, only GameSpot. A group far more concerned, however, were GameFAQs forum goers. See, GameFAQs and GameSpot had merged their forums long ago, and so rumors were flying of a potential civil war between the two sites. But there was also intel that the raiders were actually from Ebaumsworld, and were just pretending to be GameSpotters and IGNers for some reason. They tried to create a rift in CNET! I'ma be real with you, Chief. I'm not sure I believe that one. At some point before 3:17 a.m. on the 9th, the Ebaumsworld forum finally came back online, though apparently new users were prohibited from posting. It might be hard to imagine things escalating any more than this, but mark my words, you haven't seen the half of it yet. See, this whole time in the background, a particularly infamous website I've hardly mentioned yet had gotten involved with the war, and they were about to take things even further than anyone else before them. Stop me if you've heard this one before. A LUELinker walks into a thread. OP asks, "What's LUELinks?" The LUELinker responds, "What? That site doesn't exist." 50 other LUELinkers enter the thread and each spam the same ASCII art of Mario riding Yoshi. Finally, a non-LUELinker enters the thread and actually answers the question. OP stopped paying attention to the thread hours ago. Once upon a time, there was a board on GameFAQs called LU, Life, the Universe, and Everything. As suggested by the title, the board was for sophisticated discussion only, but its community grew toxic. Soon, it was like GameFAQs had its own miniature 4chan condensed into a single board. At its worst, and I wish this wasn't real, LU raided and trolled the memorialized live journal of a girl who had committed suicide. Read the comments on screen and you tell me if they went too far. GameFAQs creator, CJC, openly despised LU, and had long been taking steps to reduce its influence on the site. The LiveJournal raid prompted something known in LU canon as sterilization, where the board would forever be locked from any new users. But this still wasn't enough for CJC. Eventually, on January 15th, 2004, LU would go completely private, meaning unless you signed up for access within an extremely specific period of time, you would never be able to get in. This is the culture that LUELinks was created in. On May 8th, a user named LlamaGuy posted a topic to LU announcing the creation of his new spin-off site, LUELinks. See, LlamaGuy had recently been put in purgatory by GameFAQs mods for using a link shortener to troll people with Goatsy. His solution to this evident dictatorship was LUELinks, a private forum where LU folks could share links with each other away from the prying eyes of GameFAQs mods. In its first 3 days, over 4,000 users allegedly signed up for the board. GameFAQs mods didn't take too kindly to this. Linking to it was outright banned, and even mentioning it was apparently taboo. Thus, LUELinks became half-jokingly referred to as the site that doesn't exist. It's through this that a certain mystique began to form around LUELinks. It's a private forum that you can only join by having been a member of another equally private forum, where you aren't even allowed to link it. Its affairs are as insular as they are enigmatic, and you can't even dream of being a part of it. But to pull back the curtain a little, it's a secret club where a bunch of edgy teenage boys shared wares and porn with each other. But like, a mysterious version of it. Also, as you might be able to imagine, hearing that there was yet another forum with 0 archives involved in this war was just peachy. Lue and LUELinks effectively have the same user base. They both use Lushi as their mascot, an ASCII art of Mario riding Yoshi that they spam everywhere they go. They both call themselves losers. Yes, that's real. Glad they did it for me. So if one loser finds out about the Ebaumsworld war, 2 sites hear about it. Though LUELinks typically had rules against invasions, and a message most likely posted at 12:46 p.m. on January 8th, Llama Guy gave his blessing for the attack. I don't like invasions because they cause headaches and troubles for webmasters and users who usually don't deserve any of that. The webmaster of Ebaumsworld, however, is a plague on this internet. He has no respect for anyone else, so I don't have respect for him. Therefore, I don't give a shit if you invade his website or not. The floodgates were open. An official topic for the invasion was made, but there was a problem. LUELinks had been experiencing lag and occasional errors ever since the initial raid. Apparently, Llama Guy later discovered this was due to DDoS attacks. LUELinks soon began fluctuating up and down, with more lag and errors to boot. But even with their website seemingly collapsing in real time, when it was up, losers planned out future attacks on Ebaumsworld, from mass emails to a DDoS script which specifically targeted Lohan Facial. Most concerningly, they managed to find the phone numbers and addresses of various Ebaumsworld employees, but that still wasn't enough. Once upon a time, there was a board named Lue. It was a sprawling internet metropolis, and one of the biggest draws of GameFAQs. Soon, however, their community grew so caustic that they had to be secluded, sterilized, and eventually excluded entirely. Yet even still, they persisted. Their culture was founded on rule breaking. Their entire ethos was about going too far, and Ebaumsworld HQ was about to find that out firsthand. After all, the internet is serious business. No later than 10:12 a.m. on January 9th, Max updated ytmnd news once more. Hello, gents. I thank you for your devotion to the site and to the camaraderie you all have shown. But it's time to be done with the down with Ebaums mentality. It's over. Can we move on now? People don't move on. No later than 8:03 p.m., he tries the forums. Don't DDoS. Don't ping. If you post about it here, I will freely give your information to the FBI. People don't stop the attacks. No later than 9:33 p.m., he makes yet another news post, threatening to ban people if they post DDoS instructions, hack instructions, or calls to arms. At this point, you are doing nothing but hurting ytmnd, so stop making attacks and stop representing ytmnd. Do I even need to tell you if this made people stop or not? At 8:21 p.m., 2 losers named Sir Bobbert Fishbone and Ninja223 posted to LUELinks. Well, LUELinks, I'm back. Ninja and I headed out in search of the fabled Ebaumsworld headquarters. We arrived at an adjacent parking lot, parked, plotted the next move. We wandered up the street towards the building we assumed to be the headquarters. We then walked towards the building. It looked like a big house, not at all worth $850K. You probably can't see it well, it was dark and raining, but here's a pic. We next moved around back to see if there was anything identifying the building as that of Eric Bauman. Sure enough, a parking spot, reserved for Ebaums. I can only assume this is his Jeep. It is most definitely not lead at all! What an asshat! We moved to the door with stealth, and hung the signs that Ninja had made. I hope we don't wind up on any security tapes. The pictures they linked of their adventure have mostly been lost to time, but surprisingly, though it took hours upon hours of scouring every nook and cranny of the internet, I was able to find exactly one surviving picture of their excursion archived on a ytmnd site, a picture of the signs they hung up on the property. The next bit is the only source that I've decided to completely redact from this video. You'll soon figure out why I had to do this, and I hope my meticulous research throughout the rest of the video has earned me your trust on this one. Shortly after this event, someone took to the ytmnd forums with a similar story. It's unclear when exactly this transpired, but judging by its contents, it was likely the same night as the vandalism. Quote, several people from a site called LUELinks thought it would be funny to go to the Ebaumsworld headquarters and put up a note on the door. Well, seeing as I live in Rochester, I wanted to see this, so I drive out to the HQ and walk around door to door. I check every damn door at the place, and nothing. Finally, I go around and check each door carefully, and lo and behold, a piece of tape! These cowards didn't even leave their flyer up! They took it down! The only remains of it was this piece of tape shown in this picture. Cowards! Now for something completely different! We had another destination in mind tonight, the guys who posted these pictures' house. The poster then proceeds to dox the address and phone number of Bobbert and Ninja before continuing. Long story short, we made a run for their house and got a few decent pictures. Now for our pics of their house and their Saturn. Saturn is a bitch car. Now, we plan on turning over this information to Ebaum. That, along with the fact that they are, from this point forward, nothing else from the incident is archived. Look, forget snowballs and avalanches. It doesn't take a stupid metaphor to realize things have spiraled light years out of hand. No later than 12:05 a.m. on January 10th, Max took to ytmnd's news section yet again to clarify my statement. In the last 2 days, people have really been crossing the line when it comes to this whole charade. It's one thing to post on the forums or send emails showing your dissatisfaction. When you cross the lines of legality and start DDoSing, pinging, bonking, leeching servers, sending death threats, visiting these people in person, you not only subject yourself to harsh legal punishments, but by doing so in the name of ytmnd, you subject me, ytmnd, and my hosting company to the same legal scrutiny. You guys got your point across. You got some huge press, and he definitely knows you exist and aren't happy with him. That being said, you are not going to accomplish anything but the demise of ytmnd and possibly legal liability by continuing to attack his site. So please, stop. You are steering ytmnd down a treacherous path, one which once traveled down far enough, we won't be able to come back. But no matter how many sites Max deleted, no matter how many times he pleaded for his users to stop, no matter how many times he warned people of the dangers of taking the raid to illegal extremes, it just wouldn't stop. The raid may have been called ytmnd-day, but it was also World Wide Web War 1. So many sites were wrapped up in the raid that at this point, no one person could stop it. The internet was out for blood. The webmasters, and Max in particular, could only pray for it to end quickly and peacefully. No, wait. There was one thing that could possibly bring about the end of this war. Maybe, just maybe, if Ebaumsworld admitted fault, apologized, and took down Lohan Facial, it'd all be over. Sure, they'd probably just go back to stealing again, but at least there'd be a temporary peace. Regarding the recent attacks on Ebaumsworld, for the last 36 to 48 hours, Ebaumsworld.com has been the victim of a global cyber-terrorism attack allegedly conducted by an alliance of webmasters and their followers who disagree with our company's editorial process. The attack has come in several forms, including a DDoS attack, malicious attempts at gaining access to restricted parts of the site, spamming our forum and chat rooms, hacking into admin-restricted accounts. There have also been numerous personal threats made against individual Ebaumsworld staff members. Most recently, our physical corporate headquarters building was vandalized, so we've been forced to hire on-site security personnel. We have also opened the dialogue with our local police cybercrime unit, which works very closely with the FBI in matters like this. FAQ: why are you under attack? The cyber terrorists claim that Ebaumsworld featured an animation created by an individual they represent without the permission of that individual. Did Ebaumsworld steal this animation? Absolutely not. We received this animation as a contest submission by someone claiming to be the original author. It is our policy for all content we receive to be accompanied by a consent and release form before we feature it. We also log contact information, the originating IP address, and any information given to us about the original creator of any content, including any other proof of origin the author can provide. We have yet to receive any communication from anyone claiming to be the original author of the animation in question other than the user who submitted it to us. If you are the original creator and want it removed, by all means, please let us know. Well, that's one way to make things worse. Also, you know how at the beginning of the year when you try to write the date but accidentally write the previous year by mistake? Well, Ebaumsworld did that. According to their URL, their response was actually for whatever the f*** happened on January 10th, 2005. Contrary to what Ebaumsworld said, SpliceVW, Lohan Facial's creator, claimed to have attempted to contact them twice already. In protest, he'd also heavily watermarked the Lohan gif. I can watermark too. Eric Bauman blows! At 2:14 p.m., he wrote that he was sending Ebaumsworld an official cease and desist over their theft. On the morning of January 10th, Max was contacted once again about the raid, this time by Ebaumsworld staff. They told him about the ytmnd forum goer who had visited Ebaumsworld HQ, along with stalking those LUELinks guys before asking for the poster's information. It's unclear what info, if any, Max gave to them, and by that point he had already taken down the offending post long ago. But then, at 3:01 p.m., he received an email from none other than Eric Bauman's father, Neil Bauman, who ran Ebaumsworld with his son. Specifically, it was a cease and desist notice, or at least, it purported to be such. But the actual wording of the email hardly resembled anything you'd expect from such a document. Neil followed his cease and desist with another email, consisting of one sentence. Please feel free to post this if you have the gonads. Max obliged, and no later than 10:04 p.m., shared the entirety of their interaction on ytmnd News. Neil recapped a bunch of stuff we've already covered before writing, "You have now officially crossed the line. You can consider this formal notification that we have initiated a criminal complaint with several agencies, including the FBI Cyber Terrorism Unit. I realize that most of your entire website is comprised of pathetic, pimply-faced, maladjusted preteens whose parents don't love them, and their best Saturday night date takes AA batteries. Be that as it may, you have now become a criminal threat." He brings up their signed release form before remarking, "Do you have any idea how foolish and immature you look through this?" Of course, I am referring to the real three-dimensional world where real people live and work. You and your forum obviously live in very dark places where they don't teach spelling, grammar, logic, reasoning, etc. Ebaumsworld Incorporated lives in the real world, and we are very tolerant and sensitive to the underprivileged and the mentally challenged. He then challenges ytmnders to debate him over the phone, before recounting a curious story. The first guy you sent in here probably soiled his pants when he couldn't answer the simplest question and literally ran out the door. Lol. I don't think he is a candidate for Mission Impossible. The police have already contacted him, and our lawyers will have fun with Ben and his parents. As far as I can tell, whoever this Ben character is never posted about their alleged trespassing online, since Neil's email is the only evidence of this encounter. He ends off by writing, "BTW, the FBI told me that the operators and facilitators of your site are more liable than they think. They likened your forum to terrorists who always stay underground. Is that the way you envisioned your forum at its inception? How pathetic. I look forward to your reply. Neil J. Bauman." Flabbergasted, Max left a voicemail at the Ebaumsworld office to verify that the cease and desist was real. Shortly afterwards, Neil sent him another insulting email confirming it was. It's more of the same, with him accusing Max of losing his Yiddish cup. He ends off by claiming that Max will soon be contacted by federal investigators. Now it was Max's turn to reply. "Dearest Neil, I appreciate every email I get, but yours holds a special place in my heart. If you had been paying attention, for the last 3 days I have been deleting hundreds of users, sites, and posts with pieces of your personal information. I'm done. People have been attacking me and my ISP just for making public statements not to attack you. You obviously overestimate my involvement, but I guess you have to be paranoid when you are so widely hated. I run a website where some people spend a lot of time and effort creating things to entertain others. You run a site where you take and rebrand things to host them without citing credit. How long do you think you can hide behind your submission technique? I think we both know that there is no possible way the majority of the content owners from which you steal can beat you on the civil level. This is due to the fact that you are a sleazy businessman that practices underhanded tactics and has a team of lawyers, while the people who are creating the crazy content you so masterfully profit off of have nothing. These people don't have lawyers. They probably earn very little if nothing off their works. These kids don't want your money. They want the general respect any person should give. When someone spends the time to create something, regardless of their content sources, they just want to be cited. Is it really a big deal? He accused Neil of being unprofessional before continuing. I have no quarrel with Ebaumsworld. That being said, here is my challenge to you. How about you stop hiding behind the money and privilege of a legal team paid for by party poker pop-ups and admit you and your employees are profiting from theft and purposefully going out of your way to make sure creators don't get credited for their work. I will continue deleting things that break my terms of service, but beyond that, expect nothing. Here is my final offer. Tomorrow at midnight, I will delete anything with the term Ebaum. I offer to do this for you if you remove lohanfacial.html from your website. Lovingly, Max. Max's reply was universally praised by the ytmnd community. Neil's email? Not so much. The entire internet collectively made fun of it, including an absolutely incredible dramatic reading by ytmnd Bumaga.
Obviously, you have lost possession of your Yiddish cup.
Speaking of, Yiddish cup became an in-joke among ytmnders, mostly because nobody had any idea what it was supposed to mean. Apparently, it's a corruption of the phrase Yiddischer Kop, which means Jewish head. So he's basically saying Max has lost his head, but like, Jewishly. On January 11th at about 2:14 a.m., Lohan Facial was removed from Ebaumsworld. According to Splice VW, they got his cease and desist. The GIF briefly lingered under the file name Lohan F You Guys 187, which, given everything else I've covered today, should not surprise you. Some people thought the 187 in the file name was a veiled death threat because it's the California Penal Code for murder, but this version of the image was quickly taken down as well. Max stayed true to his word and deleted every site with the term Ebaum in it, totaling 412. And with that, the World Wide Web war finally began to peter out. ytmnd faced some residual DDoSing, as I'm sure Ebaumsworld did too, but with the stolen content deleted, there was little point to it anymore. The internet was finally at peace. I've lived my life such that for the past 4 months, I've been researching a stupid internet drama from 20 years ago. Crazier still, I legitimately worry about the accuracy and thoroughness of said research. During the process of every video I've ever done, countless hours have been spent with my head in my hands, mind racing, wondering if I've made a mistake. It's more true for this video than any other. I wasn't kidding when I said I'm the first person to document ytmnd-day this thoroughly. And if I had to guess, this video probably has at least a few errors due to not having anyone else's work to base my own on. Why does that fact haunt me? Well, the real answer is that I'm an anxiety-ridden perfectionist, so perhaps the more useful question is, what is the merit in caring so much about this? After all, the internet isn't real, right? But it is real. However intangible, it's more real now than ever before. 100 years from now, you can bet your ass there will be historians who would kill to have access to the internet as it is right now. I mean, what I'm talking about only happened 20 years ago, and link rot has already made it borderline impossible to research. So, however silly it feels to put so much work into what I do, at least it has theoretical value, especially since, in a strange way, I'm kind of at the forefront of what I do. You know, researching niche nonsense on the internet. Read a fake job that isn't real. But why do I care about internet history specifically? The internet isn't real is an obviously false thing that people wryly comment all the time. But however obviously wrong it is, there's a reason why it's so common. The internet constitutes this sort of unreality. Denizens of this bizarre digital realm act in ways that they wouldn't or even couldn't in real life. And because of that, the stories that occur here are just as, if not more strange than the ones that happen in real life. The more I think about it, the more mystifying the very concept of the internet becomes. We take it for granted nowadays, but we've essentially created this alternate dimension, one with endless digital spaces to explore and inhabit. Thus, my favorite stories are the ones that make me think, man, this could only happen on the internet. However frustrating it is to spend hours trawling through endless forum threads, however painful it is to worry so incessantly about events so ostensibly meaningless, I still do this because sometimes, very rarely, I happen upon a eureka moment, a shard of undiluted strangeness that leaves me winded. A moment of such dramatic and compelling storytelling, I stare at the screen transfixed, unable to look away, but simultaneously unable to comprehend how what I'm looking at is even real. All of this is to say, do you remember Azuretek? All the way back in November, Eric Bauman had asked Legal Condom to take down Ebaumsworld Sucks. Nothing came of it, but in the wake of ytmnd-day, he'd surely seen the site more times in the past week than ever before. So, on January 13th, he tried again, and this time, he wasn't messing around. At 3:41 p.m., Legal Condom started a Something Awful thread, Ebaumsworldsucks.com. So, Ebaum messaged me a few minutes ago, and he's telling me to take down Ebaumsworld Sucks. Now, I'm not really having a problem with removing the actual site and just forwarding to Newgrounds, but he told me to forward it to his site, that he would own it in 72 hours, so it didn't even matter. So, what should I do? And I don't want you people to just give me a bunch of bullshit and just make a big flame thread. I want to hear actual ideas, and if you don't have anything new to say, don't bother telling me. Thanks. Legal had already been talking to Trapezoid behind the scenes, and was waiting for Alt F4 to get online. Replies immediately flooded in, mostly of a similar tone to, tell him to go f*** himself with a rusty spanner. Others were incredulous at how Ebaum thought he even had the right to take it down. According to Legal, Eric claimed that the site was infringing on his trademark of Ebaumsworld, to which he brought up PayPal Sucks as a counterexample. But Lowtax had a different outlook. He told Legal to nix the header since it was just the Ebaumsworld header with modified text, as well as the copyright Ebaumsworld Incorporated text at the bottom of the page, since that's just misinformation. Legal Condom thanked Lowtax and said he'd make the changes. Lowtax offered to pay any legal bills if it came to that. Following Lowtax's advice, some goons began cooking up new headers for the site, with this one eventually being chosen. But simultaneously, another wave of comments was springing up. Just like last time, goons wanted to see the logs of his exchange with Eric. At first, it was just a few stray replies, but soon more and more began asking that Legal fork them over, until at 4:34 p.m., he finally responded. Unfortunately, I don't post things like this for the public. Makes me look like a jerk. The goons were not pleased. You can't be serious. You're like the worst possible guy to be hosting this website, just FYI. Have some balls. Not posting them is really making you look like a jerk to me. Even Lowtax chimed in. No, it doesn't. It makes the person threatening you with baseless legal bullshit look like an idiot. Are you saying I'm a jerk because I post logs of people threatening to sue me on Something Awful? Amidst this scrutiny, Alt F4 finally came online. You say that if he has a problem, he should email me. I'm sure we can come to a gentleman's agreement. Some people grew excited at the prospect of Alt F4 contacting Eric, but this excitement was stymied by a pronounced lack of logs. Guys, Legal exclaimed, the logs aren't that interesting. Nobody was buying it. I don't understand this guy at all. Why did you register that domain in the first place if all you do is fold at any contention? I've never heard of such a pansy in my life. So post the AIM logs, please. There. I asked nicely, because I'm a nice person. Won't you be a nice person too? Voting 1 until logs are posted. Then I will change my vote to a 5. Wait, he contacted you over AIM and not email? Sounds kinda weird and possibly fake to me. Alt F4 responded to that last concern by clarifying that it was definitely the real Eric, but this did little to quell the frenzy. Finally, after pages of outrage hurled his way, Legal caved. Well, okay, since you guys are being bitches, the reason I didn't post them is because I'm Azuretek, the programmer that was blamed for decompiling Flash, etc. for him, when really all I did was write E-links and E-news for him and made some forum mods and shit. Hopefully I skipped the permabanning this time. And that's the precise moment when the thread exploded. Eric. Hey, Azuretek. Sup, homie. I need Ebaumsworldsucks.com taken down immediately. Why? Because it's trademark infringement, not to mention defamation of our company. I want it taken down. I'm getting harassed badly. According to Azuretek's own testimony, he spent most of the conversation just stalling so that he could figure out what to do. Their chat proceeded both amicably and casually, with both of them even going so far as to use emotes and emoticons. Azuretek acted mostly receptive to Eric's demands. Meanwhile, Eric wanted to talk to the host of Ebaumsworld Sucks, Neil Conroy. See, although Azuretek operated Ebaumsworld Sucks, a friend of his named Neil Conroy was technically the one who registered the domain, so Eric sought to confront him directly. In the immediate aftermath of the logs, Azuretek answered the questions and concerns of the goons. Now, before I get into this, just know that this is all based on Azuretek's own words. Basically, take it with a grain of salt. Anyway, Azuretek used to work for Ebaumsworld as a programmer, and thought little of the moral implications of the site's actions, which eventually led to the infamous SomethingAwful thread where he was permabanned. At some point, Azuretek stopped receiving work from him, so they stopped talking to each other. That's why their conversation seemed so casual. Even after being permabanned from SomethingAwful, Azuretek still found himself drawn to the site, so he created a new account and integrated himself back into the community. According to him, he hosted many online projects by goons, including Ebaumsworld Sucks. At some point, Azuretek had changed his mind about Eric's practices, calling what he said in the infamous thread pretty stupid and obviously mistaken. Alt-F4 and Trapezoid had no idea that Legal Condom was Azuretek. He'd only revealed it to Alt-F4 some 15 minutes prior to the logs being leaked. A goon named Limecole claimed that he'd just been on the phone with Trapezoid, and apparently he didn't even know until Limecole told him. As to why Azuretek felt the need to reveal his identity now, he wrote, "You all would ask how he got my screen name, and I'm not too good at making convincing lies." The thread initially had a mixed response to Azuretek's logs, with some replies such as, "Wow, way to p*** out and pander to him." But given that he was now hosting the biggest anti-Ebaum site on the internet, most forgave his previous history as Azuretek, including Lotax, who spared him from a second permaban. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, something interesting was brewing. At 7:31 p.m., Azuretek wrote, "Right now I'm trying to get Ebaum in touch with Alt-F4. Alt-F4 was completely on board. I think I am more or less one of the in-charge powers of Ebaumsworld Sucks. I might be able to tell him to f*** off with logic and maybe get a lolful email from his dad in the process." If you recall, Eric wanted to talk to Neil Conroy, host of Ebaumsworld Sucks. So, Azuretek pulled a bait and switch. He convinced Eric that Alt-F4 is Neil Conroy. Thus, Eric happily obliged to talk to him. Eric Bauman, creator of Ebaumsworld. Alt-F4, the brains behind the flash that started it all. It would all come down to this. Ebaum. Hello. Alt-F4. Hello, Ebaum. Fridays sure are nice, aren't they? Yes, we get away from our excellent paying jobs which involve no illegal activity whatsoever. At 10:03 p.m., the confrontation began. Over the next hour, Alt-F4 would update the thread with the contents of their showdown. This is how it went. Eric asked Alt-F4 to stop hosting his animation on Ebaumsworld Sucks. Quote, "A small percent of your animation may be true. We try our hardest to give credit where it is due. You are giving us a bad name." But Alt-F4 wouldn't give in that easily. "Here, I'll make you a deal. You delete everything on your site and work from the bottom up with all new, all original content, and I will forward the domain to your website." However, Eric claimed that he did give credit to artists. "Oh, cry me a river," Alt-F4 spat. "You've only started credit since I called you out on it." "Prove otherwise," Eric demanded. "Prove what otherwise? That I don't give credit to original authors? I would love to know so I can clear my name." At first, it seemed like Alt-F4 was struggling to name specific instances of Eric stealing. Like I said near the beginning of this video, even those who hated Ebaumsworld struggled to list specific examples of them stealing. Alt-F4 blustered for a bit, but after Eric continued prying, he finally managed to recall that Weeble's flashes had been stolen. After some discussion, Eric politely said, "I would be more than happy to remove his work if he does in fact want it removed. Why wouldn't I? What else do you have for me?" He was back to asking for those pesky specifics. Luckily, Comrade Flynn, the owner of Peanut Butter Jelly Time, happened to be in the thread asking Alt-F4 to bring him up. Comrade Flynn wants his flash removed and his dancing banana removed from your header bar. Eric once again was surprisingly receptive. "I will investigate this immediately. Anything else, Neil?" And this time, it seemed like Alt-F4 truly couldn't recall anything else. "Have you ever been to Ebaumsworld?" he jeered. "Yes, obviously. website? Well then, surely you know that there is no way the things on your website were all sent to you by their original authors. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a flash or a public outcry. People love having their work on a top 500 site that gets over 1 million unique viewers a day. It's incredible exposure for authors. So I guess everyone just hates you because of one big crazy misunderstanding, eh? Correct, Eric said. That is why I am talking to you. If these authors really don't want their content shown, why don't they contact me? It seems like you are just stirring up trouble for no reason. I am very reachable. Did your dad help you type that? Tell him I still have my Yiddish cup. Lol. Actually, they do. They either A, don't get a reply, or B, figure it's futile because of all these past stories. Finally, it seemed like Ulta4 was able to recall more examples of Eric's thievery. Along with mentioning a Rainbow Flash game, he also said, schfifty-five is still up last time I checked. Oh, it's been removed? Well, golly, you really have changed your ways. I guess I'll just take that website down now. Eric apparently didn't pick up on his sarcasm. I really appreciate it. No prob, buddy. Despite Ulta4's hostility, at this point the conversation took a more productive turn. Ulta4 said he would compile a list of stolen content for Eric to take down. Meanwhile, Eric claimed that ever since the Ebaumsworld.com flash was released, artists whose work had been reposted by Eric contacted him trying to get it removed, and from there they were able to hash out proper deals with him. But then Ulta4 reiterated that he wouldn't take down the website. I thought we had a deal, Eric exclaimed. The deal being you would start obeying the law a little and I would suddenly delete my website? I don't remember saying that. I want royalty checks to authors. I want a public apology. I don't want you to get to the point where someone is emailing you to get things removed. I want you to have certified permission before you post the flash. I want credit where it is due on every flash. I want MG Unit to lose his mod status on your forum. And I don't want to see the balls of any of your users ever again. Royalty checks, eh? Can I also submit some hosting bills to them? For the rest of the conversation, tensions remained high. In the end, Eric claimed that he was no longer interested in taking serious action against Ebaumsworld Sucks. They both had vague plans of chatting with each other again, but that seemed unlikely when Ulta4's final message read, Ebaum, I hope you like coming off as a douchebag on your high horse who does nothing but dodge questions and feign ignorance. From this point, each site involved with ytmnd-day would have their own separate histories, and eventually fade from relevance. Some fell from grace with grace, and others were something awful. But I'm an empath, so I can tell that what you really want to know is what became of Ebaumsworld. Following ytmnd-day, while Ebaumsworld remained popular with college frat boys and the like, for internet-savvy individuals, their reputation had effectively been shredded. Eric and Ulta4 would never have that follow-up discussion they wanted. With peace talks off the table, Ebaumsworld continued in much the same fashion they had previously, mired in controversy all the while. That June, Ebaumsworld stole from an itty-bitty budding animator named Alan Becker. Yes, the animator versus animation guy, whose video detailing the entire controversy has 12 million views. But no matter how many controversies they had, even though Eric's list of ops spanned half the internet, nobody could put a dent in Ebaumsworld's success. On August 1st, 2007, a contract was drafted outlining how Eric and Neil Bauman would sell Ebaumsworld to Handheld Entertainment, soon renamed Zivu. On November 1st, Handheld put out a press release confirming that the deal had been finalized. According to the agreement, the Baumans could make out with $52.5 million. Emphasis on could. While $15 million in cash and $2.5 million in stock were to be paid out immediately upon the deal's closing, the remaining payments were conditional based on meeting certain financial targets over the next 3 years. While Ebaumsworld was past the peak of its popularity, for the time, things seemed normal, with Eric and Neil continuing their work on the site. But from the way I'm setting this up, you probably know what happens next. On January 31st, 2009, at 12:36 p.m., Eric himself wrote a post on a new blog called Ebaum.tv. As you may have heard, Zivu has decided to let myself and the rest of my team go. Neil. As it turns out, Zivu was having financial difficulties, to say the least. Apparently, Eric and Neil had even sued Zivu 2 weeks prior because they hadn't been receiving their paychecks. According to the testimony of another Ebaumsworld employee fired at the same time, Zivu's CEO had informed them that they were closing the entire Rochester, New York office due to operational and financial reasons. Quote, "We asked him what his plans for the site were and he couldn't give us a straight answer. We do know, however, that he has a team of 4 developers, one of them being a secretary that was trained to be a developer. These developers are completely unfamiliar with the site's code and infrastructure. I'd also say that the content department is probably going to be just as lost. It seems like the Baumans only ever got the first 17.5 million from the sale." On November 18th, 2009, Zivu put all of their assets up for sale on the auction block, including Ebaumsworld. Okay, but let's not mince words here. $17 million is still more money than I, and statistically you, will ever see in our entire lives. All that for a site based at least partially on stolen content is incredible, right? Well, yes, but when it came to what to do with that money, let's just say not everything went according to plan. In 2007, Neil and Eric started a new real estate venture. The plan was to spend $3 to $5 million on this project, funded by the sale of Ebaumsworld as well as loans. It would be managed under their new company, Ebaums Webster Ventures LLC. Wait, 2007? Real estate venture? Oh no! To make a long story short, Ebaums Webster Ventures suffered a prolonged and dramatic death, including 2 bankruptcy filings and mountains of debt, before their properties were eventually seized. On July 24th, 2015, Neil Bauman filed for personal bankruptcy. According to Rochester Business Journal, he owed nearly $100,000 to the IRS. Quote, "Bauman's personal tax debt traces to the 2007 sale of his son's .com venture, Ebaumsworld Incorporated. Interest and penalties on taxes levied on income he was supposed to get as part of the sale but never actually received account for most of the tax liability," he said. Through bankruptcy, his debts were discharged, though even after that, Comida sought over $800,000 from them. Far less dramatic is what happened to Eric. He never stopped making internet businesses and websites, with the most interesting being Ebaum Nation. This was his successor and direct competitor to Ebaumsworld. The best thing I can say about it is that it's pretty uncontroversial, largely because no living, breathing human being has ever used it. By July 2015, it went down entirely, then a few months later redirected to a newer project of Eric's, Smash.com. Come the Smash.com era, any semblance of identity the website once possessed had eroded away, leaving behind an empty husk that felt more like BuzzFeed than Ebaumsworld. Butt glitter is the hottest new trend on Instagram, and is this summer's festival fanny fashion wear. In 2019, the site went down entirely, and nobody noticed nor cared. Ebaumsworld went from Zivu's hands to Viumbe. All the while, the site's popularity only dwindled. On April 21st, 2016, it was sold once again to Literally Media, which also owns Know Your Meme and some other stuff. The site is a shell of its former self. Where Ebaumsworld was once hip, edgy, and famous, now it's perfectly molded to the current cookie-cutter clickbait template that every site conforms to nowadays. Generic listicles, bad memes, and shallow link aggregation tactics have all but taken over. Visiting the website feels more like paying disrespect to a digital graveyard than anything resembling fun. Did Ebaumsworld seek permission to put these unfunny memes up here? Does anyone even care at this point? While ytmnd, Something Awful, Newgrounds, GameFAQs, etc. have faded from relevance, they're all largely remembered fondly. It's hard to say the same for Ebaumsworld. Even to this day, anytime someone mentions the site, a bunch of the replies will be about how they stole all their content. And that's if anyone even remembers Ebaumsworld to begin with. ytmnd-day did not involve a lot of practical action taken against Ebaumsworld. Ebaumsworld Sucks did a bit more in that regard, but still fell far short of its stated goals. Even still, the one thing they did succeed at was writing the legacy of Ebaumsworld.com. Well, I suppose there is another thing they succeeded at. Wasting 4 goddamn months of my Baka Chungus life. Screw everything! Thanks once again to boot.dev for sponsoring today's video. Don't forget to use code CrunchyBagels for 25% off your first year, link in the description. I also want to thank my patrons including Funky Boy Haas, Goats, KD Pack, Mini, Neon Manta, and Temper. Thank you for your patronage.